A 5-year-old is climbing a jungle gym in a Tokyo park when her foot slips. She tumbles off the bottom rung, lands on the ground, and bursts into tears. For a second, the whole playground seems to pause. She looks up, searching for her mother. And her mother, sitting on a bench 15 feet away, doesn't move, doesn't rush over, doesn't even stand up. She just watches, calm, present, waiting. If your stomach just tightened reading that, you're not alone. Every instinct in you is probably screaming that a parent should be running over right now. But watch what actually happens next, in moments like this, again and again, across Japan. The little girl sits there for a second, crying. She looks back at her mother, who gives her a small, steady nod. And then, slowly, she wipes her face, gets up, and goes right back to playing. That's not neglect. That's not coldness. That's a parenting philosophy so different from what most of us grew up with that it can look, at first glance, like the parent doesn't care. She cares completely. She's just been taught something most Western parents never were. Japan is widely known for raising calm, cooperative, well-mannered kids. It's one of the most common things visitors notice within days of arriving. And it's not because Japanese children are punished into obedience. It's because of a parenting philosophy so simple and so different from what most of us were taught that once you hear it, you'll never look at your own child's behavior the same way again. Here's what you're probably thinking. That's Japan. My kid isn't like that. This won't work for us. Stay with me, because none of what you're about to hear requires moving to Tokyo, and none of it requires becoming a stricter parent. If anything, it asks you to be gentler, just more deliberate about it. Researchers who study cross-cultural parenting have spent decades comparing how Japanese and Western mothers respond to the exact same moments with their kids. And the differences aren't really about discipline at all. They're about sequencing, what you do first, what you hold back on, and what you trust your child to handle alone. By the end of this video, you'll have 5 ideas you can start using tonight. The hidden philosophy. Everything you're about to hear explains why visitors are so often surprised by how calm Japanese children seem, in public, under pressure, in moments that would send most kids into a full meltdown. It starts here. Here's where most people get Japanese parenting wrong. They assume calm, well-behaved kids must come from a stricter household. More rules, more consequences, more control. The opposite is closer to the truth. The foundation of Japanese child-rearing is a word called shitsuke. Written with 2 characters, one meaning body, the other meaning beauty, it's sometimes translated simply as training, but that undersells it. Shitsuke isn't about punishing bad behavior after it happens. It's about building, slowly and patiently, a child who doesn't want to misbehave in the first place. Not out of fear, but because good behavior has quietly become part of who they are. Compare that to how you were probably raised, and maybe how you still parent without even noticing. Your child throws a tantrum, you react. They ignore a rule, you punish. They forget their manners, you correct them on the spot. It works for a moment, and then the exact same thing happens again tomorrow. That's because reacting to behavior treats the symptom, not the cause. Researchers comparing Japanese and Western parenting styles as far back as the 1970s noticed something specific here. Western mothers tended to tell kids what to do. Do this, don't do that. Japanese mothers rarely lectured at all. Instead, they simply modeled the behavior over and over and let kids soak it up by watching. No lecture, just example, repeated until it became normal. Japanese parents ask a different question entirely. Not, how do I make this stop? But, what skill is my child missing right now? Patience, communication, emotional regulation? These are skills, and skills have to be taught, slowly, the same way you'd teach a child to tie their shoes. That's the philosophy underneath everything else on this list. Now let's get into the 5 practical ideas built on top of it, starting with the one that explains why that mother on the park bench never once got up. Idea 1. Watching instead of rescuing. There's a concept in Japanese parenting and early childhood education called mimamoru. It roughly means to watch over while protecting. And researchers who study it describe it as intentional non-intervention, staying close, staying attentive, but resisting the urge to jump in and fix a child's struggle for them. Your instinct probably runs the opposite direction. Your child struggles, you step in. They cry, you solve it. They fail, you rescue them. You do it because you love them. But every time you rush in too early, you're accidentally sending a message. You can't handle this without me. Mimamoru asks parents to do something that feels almost unnatural at first. To hang back, stay present, and let the child sit inside a hard moment just long enough to try. When two children argue over a toy, a teacher practicing Mimamoru will often stand nearby without stepping in, letting the disagreement play out, even letting a few tears happen. Because that discomfort is doing something a lecture from an adult never could. It isn't coldness, it's trust, worn on purpose. To be fair, this isn't effortless for the adult. Holding back takes real emotional discipline and can even raise a caregiver's own stress, since it goes against a deep protective instinct. This isn't detachment. It's a controlled, intentional kind of patience. The practical version of this is small. The next time your child is frustrated, stuck, or upset over something manageable, count to 10 before you step in. Not because struggling is good for its own sake, but because managing a hard moment, even partly, becomes proof to a child that they can. That's a kind of confidence no amount of praise can manufacture. But Mimamoru only works if a child feels safe enough to struggle without falling apart. And that safety comes from somewhere else entirely. Idea 2. Closeness comes first, not last. Here's where a lot of assumptions about Japanese parenting fall apart completely. People hear disciplined and calm and picture something cold, distant, hands-off from birth. It's almost the reverse. Japanese parenting is built on a concept called amae, first described by the psychiatrist Takeo Doi in his landmark 1971 book, roughly meaning the feeling of being able to depend completely on someone else's love. In the earliest years, Japanese mothers are often physically close to their children. Co-sleeping is common, and a child is rarely left to feel emotionally alone. Some researchers say it's strikingly close to a Western idea psychologists have studied for decades, that babies who know they can fully rely on the person raising them grow up calmer, steadier, and more secure, no matter what country they're born in. This isn't indulgence for its own sake, it's the groundwork. A child who feels securely, unconditionally loved doesn't need to act out to get attention, and doesn't need to test limits just to check whether the love is still there. That emotional security becomes the soil that self-discipline actually grows out of. Only once that closeness is firmly established does independence get gradually, deliberately introduced. Never yanked away all at once, just handed over, piece by piece, as the child shows they're ready for it. Warmth first, structure second, not the other way around. And this isn't just theory either. A large 2022 study surveying over 1,000 parents of preschoolers found that warm parenting was clearly linked to kinder, more cooperative kids, more sharing, more helping, less fighting, while harsh, hostile parenting was linked to more behavior problems, not fewer. The closeness comes first because, statistically, it's doing real work. Now, here's a question worth sitting with for a second. Have you ever heard that in most Japanese elementary schools, the students handle the day-to-day classroom cleaning themselves, every single day, right there on the school schedule next to math and reading? That's not a cost-cutting quirk. It's the third idea on this list, and it might be the most quietly powerful one. Idea 3. Small rituals, repeated daily. Every day after lunch, in schools across Japan, children pick up rags, brooms, and dustpans, and spend about 15 to 20 minutes cleaning their own classrooms, hallways, and sometimes even the bathrooms. It's called soji, and it isn't punishment, and it isn't really about cleanliness either. It's on the schedule for a reason, because it's teaching something else entirely. At home, the same pattern shows up early. Children as young as 4 are given small daily responsibilities: setting the table, packing their own bag, tidying up after a meal. Not because parents need the help, but because a small task, repeated daily without pressure or reward, does something to a child's sense of self that a lecture never could. They start to see themselves as capable, as responsible, as someone who contributes. And identity, once it forms, drives behavior far more reliably than any rule ever will. Western parenting often skips the part where a child's own self-image gets built in the first place, leaning instead on rules and consequences. Japanese parents don't lean on "because I said so." They lean on daily repetition until the identity speaks for itself. This is simply who we are, and children tend to rise to meet whatever identity they've quietly been handed. Your version of this doesn't need a broom or a classroom. Pick one small task this week: setting the table before dinner, packing their own bag, saying thank you before every meal. Do it daily, without a reward attached, just quiet repetition and expectation. Give it 3 weeks and watch what starts to shift. Idea 4. Correct in private, never in public. There's one more piece of this that visitors to Japan notice almost immediately. If a Japanese child acts out in public, most parents won't raise their voice on the spot. They'll wait. Correcting a child in front of strangers is generally seen as something that embarrasses everyone involved. The child, yes, but also the parent. So the more common approach is to step aside, lower the voice, and handle it quietly. Researchers who've studied this in Japan say it's not just habit, it's deliberate. Adults consistently protect a child's dignity instead of putting them on display. It isn't permissiveness. It's choosing not to let a moment of frustration turn into a public performance. There's a practical reason this matters beyond etiquette. A child corrected quietly, without an audience, has room to actually hear the correction, instead of just managing the embarrassment of being corrected in front of people. The lesson lands. The shame doesn't have to. You don't need strangers around to try this one. The same principle applies at a birthday party, in front of siblings, or with grandparents in the room. Save the correction for a quieter moment, and the moment usually teaches more. Idea 5. Modeling, not just instructing. The last idea threads through everything above it. Japanese parenting puts enormous weight on the parent simply being the behavior they want to see, rather than describing it out loud. If a parent wants a child who speaks gently, greets people warmly, or handles frustration without yelling, the primary tool isn't a lesson. It's the parent doing that thing, consistently, in front of the child, day after day, until the behavior becomes ordinary, rather than something that had to be taught in the first place. This is subtle, but it might be the hardest one to actually practice, because it asks less of your child and more of you. Before asking whether your child needs a new rule, a new consequence, or a new conversation, ask a quieter question first. Am I already doing the thing I want them to do? Tonight, pick one behavior you want more of: patience, kindness, a calm voice, and simply do it in front of them. No lecture attached. Bringing it together. 5 ideas. None of them secrets, locked away in a culture halfway around the world. Trust before you rescue. Closeness before structure. Repetition before rules. Correct in private. Model constantly. None of this requires being colder, stricter, or more controlled. It asks for more patience, not less. That mother on the park bench wasn't calm because her daughter happened to be an easy child, or because she loved her any less than you love yours. She stayed on that bench because, without ever calling it a method, she'd been building this for years. One small, repeated moment at a time. Closeness first, trust second. Identity built quietly in the background the whole way through. Her daughter got up on her own not because nobody was watching, but because someone had been watching all along, just without rushing in. If this changed the way you think about your child's next hard moment, share it with another parent who could use it. These aren't Japanese secrets locked away on the other side of the world. They're just things most of us were never taught, and they're available to you, starting tonight. And if you're interested in how different cultures raise emotionally steady kids, subscribe. There's more of this coming. We'll see you in the next one.